try and get everybody that's going to be speaking back here.
Yeah, good. The brightness on the screen. It's better. Now, it's better? Okay. Maybe they said it's good.
Great.
You guys come over.
Okay.
Kind of crowd in some, come in some. Yeah, we come in some.
I appreciate it. Okay. I'm Captain Amy Migueth with the Annapolis Police Department, and this is being live streamed on the Annapolis Police Department Facebook page. We're going to have several speakers and then have questions at the end. When we take questions, you'll just need to come up to the center table to ask them so that they're all on mic. I'm going to give a brief overview of what happened yesterday. On February 21st at 7 p.m., officers responded to the 1300 block of Tyler Avenue in the Robinwood community for a report of a shooting. Multiple callers reported 2 juveniles were struck by gunfire. Officers arrived on scene and located 2 juveniles suffering from gunshot wounds. The 2 victims, a 15-year-old male and an 11-year-old female, were transported to area hospitals by medevac. Currently, the female victim has been released from the hospital, and the male victim remains hospitalized in stable condition. A 3rd juvenile, a 15-year-old female, was injured while running from the area. She was treated at an area hospital and released. Preliminary investigation indicates that the suspect or suspects entered the community on foot from a wooded area. They fired several shots and struck the victims who were playing in the area. The suspect or suspects left the community in the same manner they entered. A home was also struck by a bullet, and no one inside the home was injured. Later the same evening at 10:05 p.m., officers responded to the 1900 block of Copeland Street in the Bywater Mutual Homes community for reports of shots being fired. Multiple callers reported hearing shots, and officers arrived on scene and located multiple shell casings, but no victims or suspects were located. 1 parked vehicle and 2 homes were struck by bullets. No one was injured, and at this time we don't know if the shooting in Robinwood and the shots fired in Bywater Mutual Homes are related. Our detectives are actively investigating these incidents, and we urge anyone with information about them to contact our detectives at 410-260-3439. Even earlier today at 1:02 p.m., we had additional shots fired heard in the Bay Ridge Gardens community. Obviously, this just happened, and we're also investigating that incident. We don't have any further information on that besides that no victims or suspects have been located. Our police chief, Chief Edward Jackson, is going to speak, and then the mayor, Gavin Buckley, and there will be subsequent speakers after that. Chief?
Good afternoon. I stand here today very frustrated, to be quite frankly. When I came to Annapolis, when Mayor Buckley swore me in on July 31st, 2019, I said before the council that confirmed me that I would bring a community policing model to the city of Annapolis to address the social problems. It's always been my argument academically and practically that you can't have the type of dynamics that occur in far too many of our communities and not address them adequately. In other words, why wouldn't you have some of the incidents that we've experienced when you have mental illness, drug addiction, alcohol dependency, broken families, abject poverty, and rage operating in far too many of our communities and expect there to be peace and law-abiding citizens? what's troubling to me and what my charge is and the stress that I feel, Annapolis, yeah, it's only 7.1 square miles and only has 40,000 residents, but it's a very important city. It's off the Severn, which is a very important port city. We have so many assets here that are important to the region, not just the city of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County at large, but to the region. We have the United States Naval Academy. We have St. John's College. We have our state legislature. And so if we don't get a handle on this and take a community approach to these problems, then what does that say? And what kind of hope does the rest of the state have when its own capital city can engage in very, very good and effective crime control models? I have standing behind me the clergy. It's always been argued that there's 6 most important institutions of social control, 6 very important, I should say, institutions of social control. And what I mean by social control are those institutions charged with getting individuals to subscribe to the dominant values of society, the kind of citizens that we would want so we can live in a peaceful and thriving environment. The first 3 are the institution of family. The second one is reinforced by our educational system, K through 12 all the way through college. And the third is our faith-based institutions. And I think everybody in this room knows what all 3 of those institutions teach. We want those to be effective so that the other 3 doesn't have to be predominant in the community, and that's police, courts, and corrections. So what am I saying? When family, faith, and education fail, you're going to have police, courts, and corrections. It's not a police problem, it's a social problem. Make no mistake about it, we take our charge very serious. I'm proud and honored to lead a department that has some of the most accomplished men and women you'll find anywhere. I don't care how big the department is, you name it, Chicago, LA. You'll find right here in the city of Annapolis some of the most accomplished investigators. But we can't do it all. We need community to get more involved. If you see something, say something. It's no way in hell, that we should be comfortable with 11-year-old and 15-year-olds being shot anywhere, not just the city of Annapolis, anywhere. And so we have to make up in our mind that we're going to do what we need to do, not only locally, but regionally. This is Black History Month. Dr. King said, a threat, injustice anywhere, is a threat to justice everywhere. So what happens in Baltimore City, what happens in Glen Burnie, what happens anywhere can come here to Annapolis. We're not immune to it. And so my charge today is that I'm working for my legacy. I realize that at my age, I'm not saying I'm an old man, but I have more years behind me than I do in front of me. If I equal my age now, I'd be 130 years old if I'm only halfway through my life. So I'm working for my legacy. I want the citizens of Annapolis to know that they have a good police department, which we do, and a police department that's truly committed to community policing. And I'll close by saying it doesn't mean that we're being soft on crime. I detest, and I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, this is strong language, but I hate trigger pullers. I think they're cowards in the sense that they can't face their own issues, don't have the courage to ask for help. I think that it's an oxymoron. Where's my deputy chief stand? We talk about that all the time. I think that they're brave, that it takes a brazen person to pull a trigger. But we need to call on the faith-based institutions. We need to call on our schools. It's everybody's problem. Bad things happen when good people do nothing. And so this is a clarion call. I'm not a preacher. I'm a very proud police chief that wants the best for the city that gave me this wonderful opportunity to lead a department and serve it. So hopefully today we can make the commitment to work together collaboratively and in a very meaningful way, without regard to egos, to make sure that we don't have 11-year-olds who haven't even begun to live yet to get shot and get comfortable with 14-year-olds and 11-year-olds and 6-year-olds. And I'm not just talking about the city of Annapolis. I'm just talking about throughout the region. So we got to make sure that when these kind of events happen, we all have to have this righteous indignation to say it won't be tolerated. Thank you. I'd like to introduce or bring Mayor Gavin Buckley up to the podium.
I want to thank everybody for being here today. This is a community that cares. This is a community that's in shock. Last night, somebody's 15-year-old son was paralyzed from a gunshot. Somebody's daughter is traumatized and was lucky to survive. We are asking people who know anything about this to come forward. If you know anyone that has a gun, or anyone that knows people that bring people into this community with guns, if you know where a gun is hidden, tell us. We need to know. We need to get these guns out of the community. These people who indiscriminately come into our neighborhoods and fire wherever, they don't care about this community. They don't care about the city of Annapolis. They don't care about even the communities that they live in. They put their own brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers in harm's way, and they're reckless. And they don't deserve to be in these communities. You have to help us find the sorts of people that would do these things. We're taking a social approach to crime, but we can't tolerate this kind of violence. I want to thank a lot of the people back here, who haven't slept, who've been up all night investigating this crime. We will find out who's done this. It's not going to make it any better for the young man who's paralyzed, but we are bringing people to justice. They have to realize that this is not going to be tolerated in the city of Annapolis. We will find you. So thank you for being here.
Now I'd like to welcome Bishop Coates, Reverend Colbert, and Pastor Menendez up to speak.
It is our custom normally when we stand to greet people, we either greeting good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time of day. Unfortunately, we don't have that greeting today because it hasn't been a good morning, hasn't been a good afternoon, and certainly last night was not a good evening, simply because two families' lives are changed forever. Two children's lives are changed forever. And as a result, they, along with every child in our community, have been left traumatized and have been, unfortunately, victims of a war that children should not have to fight. It is a war against our peace and safety in our communities. And the weapons of our enemy are not just guns. It's the ability to instill fear so that we don't fight back. How do we fight back? Certainly not with guns, but with a voice. Having the ability to speak when we know something, to say something. You know, community is the key, and this is what we have been talking about, community, a place where people live with commonalities. I think we can all agree that it is our common interest to be safe. It is our common interest that our children have places where they can play and be safe. But we also have a common enemy, which are those who insist upon dominating our communities and placing our people into a state of fear and paralyzing us. But here is still yet the good news in the midst of all of this. We still yet have the ability to come together and to rid our communities of this harm. And it's simply by doing this, understanding that one of the goals of community is that we agree that your child is also my child. You see, perhaps some of you are watching and saying, it wasn't my child. But listen, tomorrow has not gotten here yet. Tomorrow, it might be your child. You see, because this is how fear works. If fear can be instilled, then devastation can become permanent, which means someone's child today, your child tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have yet the ability to fight back. And that is simply to refuse to allow our voices to be silenced. If you know something, you must speak. Why? Because that child, those children whose lives have been changed, the irreparable damage, irreversible damage, it is also your child. It could be your child. And so today, we're making this plea. We're calling on faith-based believers, all of our pastors and communities of faith, to rally around our communities that are hurting. And let's help restore that confidence to these communities. Confidence that they're not in this alone and that we are all in this together. You don't have to live on my street to know my pain. But I believe it's imperative to know anyone listening right now that has a heart for children should know at this moment, this means war. It is time for us to use our voices and restore confidence, hope, and peace to our communities. There will be some coordinated efforts on behalf of pastors in the community. I have pastors that are standing with us right now that serve in this community. So those who are the faith-based community, we will be reaching out to you. And we want you to reach back because it's going to take all of us to rid our communities of this illness. Thank you.
Reverend Jerry Colbert, pastor of John Wesley United Methodist Church, Bay Ridge Avenue, and a chaplain for the Annapolis Police Department. And Chief, it is a pleasure serving under you. Echoing what Apostle Coates said, my plea is to the faith-based community. It's time for us to put down our pride and for us to come together for the good of the neighborhood. My other request here is to the City Council, the County Council, and legislative. We need grants. The only income that we have is from our parishioners. And most of them are on a fixed income. So we need grants in order to pull together and initiate and build and rebuild our communities, starting with the parents and the children, and so that we can come together in a conclusive effort and to put down the guns. And I can't believe, as I'm standing here, that nobody ever sees anything. Somebody sees something. So my plea to you is to work with us as we try to rebuild the neighborhoods of Annapolis. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Cheryl Menendez from Light of the World Family Ministries, and also we actually house the H2O for Life Adolescent Recovery Clubhouse in the city of Annapolis in Robinwood. That we've been there for 8 years. We were the first through the Health Department, Anne Arundel County Department of Health, to help us there, and we also have one in Brooklyn Park. Let me just say, when I got the message yesterday, when I got a call from Robinwood, from parents and families there, I lost it. I could not believe what I was actually hearing, because we're actually in Robinwood every week. We have 3 to 4 days a week that we're there in the clubhouse, thanks to Housing Authority, who allow us to have an actual facility there that we house young people ages 12 to 17. I'm hurt, as many of you are, but I have, and I thank you, Chief. You said some wonderful things that really helped to frame what I need to say right now. About 9 years ago, we did a Stop the Violence in the city of Annapolis. and it came as a result of a young man who was murdered in Robinwood. We actually met at one of the school, well, actually, it was the actual church that is on West Street, and we actually met there. And at the funeral, there were about 800 young people that were there. Pastor Coates was there. I can't remember if you were there. You might have been there. And we challenged the audience of young people, if you're tired of this, how do we work together? How do we see that it stopped? And I challenged them to meet me in Robinwood, and they did. They came, the schools got involved over a 3 to 4 month period. Mayor, we actually met at City Hall and explained to them what we were planning on doing, what we wanted to do. Actually, it took us about 4 to 5 months to plan, but every church that we worked with in the city of Annapolis agreed to adopt a community. I have been working in Robinwood and adopted that community some years ago prior to my husband's death. And let me say, there were churches that adopted communities, they worked in those communities, and sometimes life happens, and I don't know what all happened. Sometimes we see something that's maybe going well, and then all of a sudden, it's just over with. We stayed there. Not that it's us that did anything, it's that I have a passion, and as many of you do, for our children and what goes on. I want you to know the actual crime rate, the same pleas that were made, someone called in as a result of that and reported who it was that had committed the murder. And let me share with you, a lot of times, because Annapolis is so close-knit as far as family is concerned, a lot of people are related, and one of the biggest things is this fear. But let me share with you in my closing remarks is this. We have got to understand that there is something that is going through with Dr. Valente and Kaiser Permanente right now that is called, and it's been going on for a long time, called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. I have just been trained through the state of Maryland and some of the others to be ACE trainers. What that shares is that the fact that we have young people who through epigenetics may have some things going on inside of them, but also as a result of environment adaptation, that what we're finding out is those young people perceptions become their reality. Let's not take this very lightly. This is not a black issue, it is not a white issue, because the ACEs test shows at least 87% of everyone has at least one or more ACEs. How do those ACEs affect you? It affects you in the fact of what's going on in your home. Is there a divorce that's taking place? Is there drugs that is taking place? That's happening everywhere. What's going on as far as other things are concerned? Are children being abused? Are they being sexually abused, emotionally abused? There are things that are happening that we're not talking about today. And I stay in trouble because I'm willing to talk about it. Because what we have to do is not just say what the problem is, but what are we willing to do to help our communities? I have no fear with walking Robinwood. I work in all the communities, by whatever it is, over Eastport Terrace, work with the police department. You all have been wonderful, absolutely wonderful, helping me all through these 2 years as we've been giving away food and all the things that have taken place. So let me just share with you, just for this one moment, is that it's no sense in us talking about it, is after this is over, we're not going to do anything. Faith-based community. I don't care if you're Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian, Jewish, Jehovah's Witness, Nation of Islam, it does not matter. We have got to work together. We've got to work together. Come to the table. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a male, I don't care. It's time for, is anybody sick of this? Is anybody really tired? But are we tired enough to do something about it? And let's work together except just talk. That after the lights are gone, after the cameras are gone, after the news media is gone, what are we going to do after that? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Alderwoman Rhonda Pendle-Jones, she's the chair of the, Rhonda Pendle-Charles, she's the chair of the Public Safety Committee for the city. She'll speak next.
Thank you. And I'm going to take a page out of Pastor Cheryl Menendez's book. I've been a lifelong resident of Annapolis. My family's had a presence here since the Civil War. And what she said is correct. Many of us are related in this city. And oftentimes, or too often than not, or maybe not often enough, we are reluctant about turning in, for lack of a better term, relatives, schoolmates, friends, people we've known all our lives, family members who have committed or engaged in some sort of violence. But I implore you, I beg you, all of you out there and here, if you know of someone who is engaging in this behavior, please, please call the authorities or call the pastors. They're here to help us as well. As Pastor Cheryl said, it doesn't matter what denomination you are. If you need an intermediary to carry that message of who is perpetrating these crimes in our community, please find the intermediary that fits you. I just retired from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I'm not an educator. But yes, our children, when this happens to our children, I'm not disparaging when it happens to adults, but children are suffering. Like Pastor Cheryl said, the ACEs. Everyone has at least one. But we need to recognize that we must do something, because doing nothing will continue all of this. And so I ask you, I beg of you, anybody in the sound of my voice and not, carry the message. We need to do and fix this problem. Find someone who will be your intermediary to help us with this. It is our community, our neighborhood. Let's help ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderperson. I'll now invite Melissa Maddox Evans, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis, to speak.
Thank you. This is a very difficult day for us at the Housing Authority. It's very difficult. We have been in contact with the families and are speaking with them about what their needs are and how we can help them at this time. And we wanted to share that. What is difficult about this situation is not only the lifetime impacts that these incidents will have on the children and the families involved, but what is particularly troubling is that there are persons that come into our communities and they believe that this type of violent activity is acceptable, and that they continue to act in this manner without regard for the families that live there. And this one incident that happened yesterday would be horrific on its own. It is particularly troubling that it is not the first time that this has happened in our communities. So I just wanted to state that our communities are not places where violent activity is welcome. Our families have been a vital part of our communities. They are proud of where they live, and they seek to protect their families and their way of life. And we at the Housing Authority also seek the same for them. It is not right to have to live somewhere in fear that your child can't play outside for fear of being shot at, or that you can't sit in a bedroom or a living room and not fear a random bullet coming through your house. No fault of your own, and you're not even involved in the situation. So I do ask that those that have information regarding this incident, and someone definitely does have information, that they come forward. and they provide us the information that we need to make sure that the perpetrators are captured, and also to make sure if there's even anyone affiliated with this incident that might have relation to the housing authority that we know, so we can address that situation as well. The housing authority has made available 2 units at both Robinwood and Harbor House for the Annapolis Police Department to utilize 24/7 if they need to be able to provide public safety assistance to our citizens. And I just wanted to say that our residents, the people that actually live there, welcome that. They welcome increased police presence. They welcome the opportunity to feel safe in their community. And we want to encourage more presence in our community, not just particularly after an incident happens, but constantly, so that residents can feel that there's someone they can go to if they do have information to present. My hope, and I am going to be very honest with you, my fear is that this will not be the last incident that we deal with because of the proliferation of guns in this community and the unfortunate issue of people utilizing those guns to settle personal disputes. But in the meantime, until we can do something about that, I just hope that the persons that have information about this incident come forward and do what's right, so that these incidents don't keep happening over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lisa Rodbian. She's the councilwoman for Anne Arundel County for this area.
Thank you. I'll be really brief. Again, my name is Lisa Rodbian. I'm the county councilwoman for District 6 in Anne Arundel County, but District 6 includes the city of Annapolis. So these young people were my constituents. I just want to first start with a message to the perpetrator of this crime. You are lucky that the young people survived. Do the right thing now and turn yourself in, because I know this police department and they will find you. Make it easier on yourself. Bring yourself forward. Bring yourself to Taylor Avenue, to this station. To parents and families and anyone who spends their time with young people, in my day job, I'm a public school teacher, and our kids are struggling, already struggling. They have been reeling because of this pandemic. So much uncertainty, so many changes. This is the last thing they need. Find out how they feel about it. Talk to your kids, because that's how we break the cycle for the future generations, is to make sure that young people that have experienced this kind of violence have the opportunity to heal. And there is definitely healing that needs to occur. Finally, we have to be looking out for people of all ages, because I don't know if we know the age of the perpetrator, or if maybe it's not public yet. But we need to make sure that people have the resources to take care of themselves, and that someone is asking them how they are doing before they pick up a gun. Someone to talk some sense into them before they go out and harm the community. So to the perpetrator, turn yourself in. To families with young people, listen to them. And to all of us, reach out, check in on your friends, especially those that might be struggling with all of the things that we struggle with in life. Thank you.
Thank you. And also speaking.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody who violates that person then will be subject to the ridicule of the community. These officers, delegates,
briefly on his last name, but you still believe this was a random shooting and that these children were not the targets?
A 15-year-old female who was injured, but like I said, it's not any indication it was a bullet injury.
Had ballistics brought back anything about
Prosecution, the state's attorney. They're not here today, but they could better answer that. That would be how they're charged would be solely up to the state's attorney for Anne Arundel County.
Yeah.